Hello and welcome to History Through a Headset. This is our second episode, all about Red Dead Redemption 2 and the history of the Wild West. My name is Aaron Kiley and I'm with my co-hosts Julia Cass and Kara Mulligan. Hey guys, what's up?
Hey!
Hello!
Welcome back to the podcast.
Yeah! Podcast.
Oh yeah. Alright, well let's get right into it. So the events of Red Dead Redemption 2, developed by Rockstar Games, take place in 1899, at the end of the Wild West era. The story follows the fictitious Van der Linde gang in their crimes as they flee bounty hunters and federal agents on their heels through the treacherous heartland of America. Many of the characters, events, and places portrayed in the game remain remarkably true to historical accuracy, namely that of the Industrial Revolution, bounty hunters, and gypsies. The research on Gypsies was done by Kara, Bounty Hunters by Delia, and the former by myself. So I guess I'll just get right into it. As I stated, I studied the Industrial Revolution. So I'd like to start quickly by stating a quote that the main character, Arthur Morgan, stated. Very simply, he says, "We're thieves in a world that don't want us anymore." So from this quote, we could take that Arthur is what you can call an anti-industrialist. So he and like the rest of the gang, they're against the modernization of America and they're against the Industrial Revolution because they're used to their old-fashioned and like less lawful because they like steal and rob. They're used to that way of living. And now that America is starting to revolve around technology and laws, the gang is starting to feel like ostracized and like they don't belong in America. And if you remember from a history, the Industrial Revolution is defined as the process of change from an agrarian and handicraft economy to one dominated by industry and machine manufacturing, which can include the formation of cities, police forces, which would naturally push anti-industrialists like the gang away. And that's sort of, like I was telling you guys earlier, that's sort of like the main theme of the whole game, that they're like old-fashioned, they're like gunslingers, and they sort of feel like they don't belong in America, as Arthur said, that we're thieves in a world that don't want us anymore. So that's what I found quite interesting. There are like some examples of this, such as like automobiles, and like you start to like there are little hints about like airplanes starting to be developed. And if you've played the game, you know there's a city called Saint Denis. It's basically the
best
biggest,
city,
like,
by the way.
Yeah. If so, Delia, I don't know if you or Carrie, I don't know if you remember. It's like the biggest urban landscape, and when you first arrive there as like Arthur and the gang, you're like they're sort of just like talking about like, whoa, like what is this? Like they're in awe about like, you know, like what, like they've always lived in like the Wild West where everything's sort of like rural, and the Industrial Revolution has started in like the eastern part of America, and they're sort of like, what the hell is this? Because they're not used to it. And that's honestly something a lot of Americans had to face and deal with, especially because our country has started in 1899, it had already started earlier, but it was on the brink of this massive transformation that lasted for like almost a century. And of course I could go on forever about the examples and inventions manufactured, but to get you guys in on this, I know Delia studied bounty hunters, and that sort of relates to the Industrial Revolution, because as police forces started to become more prominent in cities such as Saint Denis, Arthur and the rest of the gang who you play as start to become hunted by these people. And Delia, I don't know if you want to go into more depth on that, because that's what you study.
Yeah. Like in the game, especially because I play the online version, I don't really play like the story that much, but in the online version, you as the player with your own like custom character can go around just kind of bounty hunting. You have to purchase a license, and then you can just kind of choose whatever bounty you want to go on, and then you just do it. So the interesting thing about Red Dead's bounty hunting is that it's not really, I don't know about in the story, but at least in online, it's not really accurate to either bounty hunting in the Wild West or in the modern day, because bounty hunting's like still a thing. Because in the modern day, you need a license, which you do need in the game, but it's like different. You need like training to get a license as opposed to just purchasing one. You also need to be educated in criminal justice or law, and you don't need to like be a former police officer or private detective, but like law enforcement history is like recommended, and you need to be trained in like weapons or firearms or martial arts or some sort of like defensive something.
Right.
But in the game, like you can literally just purchase a license and then just like go do it. And it's like that's not very accurate. But also in the Wild West, it wasn't really just like any person could buy a license and do it. In the Wild West, you like bounty hunters who were just common people usually hunted like animals and stuff, whereas it was like the police force and detectives and like peacemakers who are hunting fugitives. So I'm not sure who is I'm not sure if it's the police themselves hunting like Arthur and his gang, but
Yeah.
I don't, is it like
Yeah, so so you're talking about the online version. So I sort of was focused on like the actual like story mode. And in the main storyline, you are hunted by like real police, which were
okay,
named
then yeah,
Pinkertons.
that's accurate.
Yeah, and so Delia's part was not historically accurate, right? Because that's what you're talking about, like you need actual like licenses and everything. But in the story mode, like Pinkertons were like a real thing. Pinkertons were in the game. They're sort of like the police for hire, people that are after you and your gang, and really like, oh man, we learned about this in Amstead. I remember. Robber barons, like Leviticus Cornwall in the game, he's basically like real life, basically like a really rich guy who has a lot of power, sort of like we were talking about in the last episode, like the men who like blackmailed the main characters in GTA. But Leviticus Cornwall in the game, he hires these Pinkerton guys to kill and disband the entire Vanderlyn gang. And in real life, there were real people like this, such as like J.P. Morgan, Andrew Carnegie, George Vanderbilt, who would have the money and power to hire these Pinkerton agents, who were, again, basically just like police for hire, to go after criminals who would rob them and do all that stuff. Is another, like I said, relating back to the Industrial Revolution, because now these billionaires who are getting more money from factories, they have monopolies on like oil and all of these new upcoming franchises. So bounty hunting, yeah, that's sort of how it was in the story. But like Delia, that's interesting what you said about how like in the game, like you as the player, you don't need to actually like get any licenses or anything.
Yeah, you can literally just purchase it, but it doesn't make you go through like any sort of training or anything. You literally just buy a license and you go for it. But you did mention at one point like how companies and like really rich people can hire bounty hunters as well, and that is something that I did find in my research, is that like excuse me, that like along with law enforcement, it was also like companies hiring people. Like this is when Wells Fargo and Co. started getting really big around like late 19th and 20th century. Like this is when they started getting really big, and they would hire people like representatives of their company to go capture and arrest people who steal from them. Like that was also a thing that they did. And I would also like to note that bounty hunting was not a term used in the Wild West. We're referring to it as bounty hunting because it's what the game calls it, and it's what we in the modern day call it. But it was a term that existed, but was actually popularized by Star Wars, because Star Wars has bounty hunting.
Yeah.
Yeah, Star Wars.
Yeah.
But at the time, the people who went after like fugitives were called bail bondsmen, and the people who went after like just the common folk who went after like animals and animal pelts were called reward hunters, because bounty means like generosity or reward. So those are the terms that they actually used back then. So there's another inaccuracy, is that Red Dead calls it bounty hunting, and it would not have been called bounty hunting. It would have been called bail bonding.
I wanted to bring up anyone in the audience. Did you watch Dog the Bounty Hunter? Please leave it in the comments below if you did.
I didn't even watch Dog the Bounty Hunter. Also, quick disclaimer to people in the audience. While Aaron was talking, I'm not sure if it was Aaron's audio or me or Kara, but there was a little bit of background noise. So you will, they'll be able to hear you, Aaron, but I do apologize if you guys could hear that weird static. Okay, so like bounty hunting in the game, like in online, is like obviously super inaccurate because you just have to like buy the license and that's it. But we do also have to give the game some credit because that is just kind of how the general like roles work in the game. Like in the online version there's like different roles, and in each of the roles you have to pay 15 gold to kind of start that role. So in bounty hunting that's like kind of their excuse is like, oh, you pay the 15 gold to like buy the license. So
Mhm.
there's also like there's the collector role with like Madame Nazar, which is kind of what Kara talked about, and you have to like pay 15 gold to like buy her collector's bag. So
Mhm.
Kara, I don't know if you want to like talk about that, but I know that's like part
Yeah.
of the game as well.
Yeah, so yeah, I talked about Madame Nazar, and basically she's a character in Red Dead Online, which is the only version of the game I've also played. I have not played the story. I mean, I played a little bit. I've played the first game, but she's basically a collector and seller of various items, just as she is. But the important thing about her is that she's a gypsy, so during this time, gypsies travel to the United States just to sell their things, basically, like rare goods or anything they could find from the region or buy from the region to resell. And so she is located in game in a mobile sales coach, and she mostly uses that to just travel around, buy things, sell things. But she's also a fortune teller, which was common with gypsies at this time, and she attempts to read the player's fortune. Um, Basically, though, when connecting this to real life, I could just go into like talking about a lot about gypsies and where they came from, but when looking into American gypsies specifically, there is a traditional stereotype that they're just wanderers and they just travel around um in their like either trailers or anything of the sort. But they do have a purpose with all their traveling, and um rather than like just wander, they tend to like go to specific destinations that are high in value, like whether it's big cities or small towns or rural areas. They could set up shop anywhere and buy any sort of goods, sell any sort of goods, and give any sort of service along the way of their travels.
What do you mean by like like what do you mean by like service?
Well, like in the article I read, it said like they can just like stop anywhere and work for people.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
That's kind of cool. Like I didn't even know that there were like gypsies in like Red Dead Online. Like I gotta play that more, but
Yeah, it's only her, and like
uh,
I don't know. I don't like Kara, I don't know if you looked into how gypsies were like treated at the time, but they don't treat her very nicely. So like I assume they didn't really like them that
Yeah,
much.
yeah. I found a lot about like racism towards basically like all of the reasons that gypsies even came to America was a lot of deportation because there was a lot of racism against this culture because they kind of became scapegoats a lot of the time. I didn't really find specific like reasons, but I found something that I thought was interesting. Like Christian churches of Europe really attacked gypsy fortune tellers because it like went against God, and they ended up deporting a lot of fortune tellers to the United States, specifically to the West, which could be why maybe Madame Nazar is in the Western world, like,
Mhm.
or in the Wild West. So,
that's kind of cool actually. Like that's probably why she's there. You're right.
yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's like another thing. Honestly, like there's a lot of like prejudice in this time. Like compared to something like GTA. Like obviously there's gonna be people who dislike each other in like any time period, but especially in like Red Dead Redemption, where it takes place in like 1899. Like that's kind of where a lot of racism, like Kara was saying, a lot of
Yeah.
prejudice, like deportation, and even like suffrage, like women's suffrage. But Kara, that's really interesting. I didn't even know that about like
Yeah.
where they
Yeah.
came from.
There was just like a lot of deportation because also I found like just other countries, England, France, Portugal, Spain, became like they were just targeting gypsies and putting them into the New World or the
Yeah.
United States. So yeah.
Just because, like, none of us studied women's suffrage for today, but, like, Aaron, because you mentioned suffrage, that just made me think of how, like, in online, when your custom character is female, the voice lines are different in the game. Like
Yeah, I
when you
noticed
enter a
that.
shop, it'll like when you enter a shop, it'll be like, oh, like we don't get a lot of women in here, and like
I remember
if you
that. I remember that
do,
exact guy you're talking about, like in the like intro thing where he's like, "Yeah, I don't talk to a lot of women over
yeah,
there."
and he says that too. Horley says that, and for anyone confused, the online version of Red Dead has its own like little mini story, so that the player can complete like multiplayer like story missions. They're not related to the original story of the game. They're just like its own, just little mini storyline, separate thing. And at one point, there's this character Horley, and he says the line that Aaron's talking about. He's like, "Oh, I don't really talk to many women." And then later, the character, like you as a player, have a conversation with Horley and a character named Old Man Jones. And if you play a female character, he kind of is skeptical of your ability to like fight and like shoot with a gun because you're a woman. And like none of us researched this, so we have no like historical anything for this episode. But like I just think that's interesting, like just because we were talking about the prejudice against like Madame Nazar, and as well as like this time
Yeah.
period, the men were also very like prejudiced towards women. You know, when you enter
Yeah.
a gun shop and he says we don't see a lot of women out here, and then Old Man Jones critiques a woman's ability to shoot, like it's just that idea of like women just didn't really do that at the time, and if they did, like they were really
Yeah.
looked down upon.
Yeah, there's also like in the story mode, there's a character named Sadie Adler, and she's like a great character. Basically, she joins the gang because her husband like dies to another gang, and then the main gang that you play as, they kind of like take her in as their own because her husband's dead. She has like no home or house for now, and she's like this widow, and she's like kind of like uptight at first, but then she turns out to be this like really like badass character. And she's like like you would think that like when you go on the missions, like the shooting missions, robbing, she'll actually come with you, and she's the only woman in the game that actually like does that, and that's why I love her so much because she doesn't wear like, she wears pants, and I remember there's a line where they're like commenting on her pants because obviously women didn't even wear that at the time.
Yeah.
So even in the story mode, like there are female characters that kind of like go against
Oh yeah.
that.
That also kind of relates to my like topic because a lot of like the prejudice against gypsies was even just because of like their exotic or extravagant clothing. It was a lot of bright colors and flowy. They, they just looked very whimsical, and people weren't very open to that. Like Madame Nazar, if you look at her, she just looks not exactly like the average clothing you would see all the main characters wearing. It's just very, what they would say in this time, exotic.
Yeah.
But it's really not any of that, and that caused a lot of racism and prejudice too against gypsies.
And that's interesting, is that like, because the whole like everyone in that game wears like brown. Like that's what it is. You wear brown.
Yeah.
My character wears brown. Some of our
Same.
friends, like some of our friends who play, like
Poopy bro.
they just wear.
We're gonna fit it into every episode.
We're gonna fit in every episode. Look out for the poopy brown Easter egg. No, so like, because we also play with like our friends, and like our friends either wear like white or black or brown, like it's all very like neutral colors, and like a couple of them wear like blue, but like not really. Like it's mostly neutral colors. But Madame Nazar wears like purple, I think, and like
Yeah.
you don't see purple clothing in the game
I
at
can
all.
like describe it.
Yeah.
Basically, like she wears like a poofy like white top and with like a purple corset and a green skirt that has red stripes and some sort of gold beads. Like she looks so cool, but people are like, "Wow, what is she like? One of those
like, that's
fortune
just
tellers?"
Not how you
like,
dressed at the time.
yeah, one of those weird fortune teller people, and it caused a lot of racism.
Yeah.
She looks kind of cool. I'm looking at her right now.
Yeah, she has a headscarf, red headscarf.
Yeah, I like the
And
fit.
this leads into an Instagram promotion. Follow our Instagram, History Through a Headset, because I post for every episode, and I will be posting a picture of Madame Nazar when I upload. So if you want to see what she looks like, check out our Instagram post for when that is posted. You'll see her. So follow our Instagram, History Through a Headset.
She's kind of a fashion icon.
She is a fashion icon.
Boogie, I'm looking at her right now.
There's the Instagram plug. Okay, so I'm gonna shift gears a little bit just because I've been like really excited to talk about this. So I found the iconic thing with bounty hunting is the wanted posters, the wanted dead or alive. It gives you the money reward, and it shows like a drawing of the criminal's face. And one thing in Red Dead, for at least the online version, that I think is actually accurate is that like when people see wanted dead or alive, they just assume like, oh, I have the option. I could either kill this person or I could capture them. And that wasn't like really the case. Like that's just a misconception, because the only time that you could shoot or like kill a fugitive when you're like bounty hunting them is if they like resist arrest, if they put up a fight, if they're like an immediate threat to you, if they're armed. Like if you are in any sort of danger or they resist arrest, that's the only time that you can bring them in dead. But otherwise it is still murder. It's illegal. And I don't know if either of you know the iconic story of Jesse James, but this is like the biggest like case of that happening, is that Jesse James was an outlaw. Wait, I have it all written down. I'm not sure why I'm not looking at my notes. So Jesse James was an outlaw in the 1800s along with his brother Frank, and they were pretty much just out to get as rich as possible through crime. Originally they served in the Civil War, and then about a decade later they started the James Younger Gang, where again going back to Aaron's whole thing about like gangs and stuff during this time, and they just like robbed banks, they were just murdering, like they just were committing crimes throughout the Midwest. And in September of 1876, they like nearly escaped a failed robbery in Northfield, Minnesota, and that's kind of when their first gang, the James Younger gang, kind of just fell apart. And Frank went on to lead like a family life. He kind of left his life of crime, but Jesse James formed a new gang 3 years later, along with his cousins. I cannot make up these names. The first cousin is called Wood Height. The second cousin, and I'm not kidding, his name is Dick Little. so
That's so unfortunate.
It's really unfortunate. That is spelled Dickliddil. So it's not spelled as little, but his name is Dick Little. They continued just to like go on more heists. It was mostly railroad stops instead of bank robbing, but the gang was kind of starting to fall apart, and in July 1881, the state of Missouri and like the governor put a bounty on Jesse James for $10,000, which for this period of time was a lot of money. So the gang started to fall apart at this time as well. Height and Little were competing for the hand of Maria Bolton, who was the widowed sister of the Ford brothers, and the Ford brothers would be the ones who would eventually go on to kill Jesse. But Height and Little get into a shootout over Maria Bolton, and it's believed that Robert Ford like walked in during the shootout and killed Height. So eventually Little turned himself in to avoid persecution, and the governor of Missouri had a meeting with Robert Ford in a hotel room, in which I think is super weird. Why are like they meet in a hotel room to discuss like a bounty hunt, whatever. Hey, let's go to this hotel room and we'll discuss murder. So they meet in a hotel room in January.
Killing people.
Yeah. So they meet in a hotel room in January 1882, and the governor promises Robert that he will clear him of all his criminal charges and give him the $10,000 reward money if he captures Jesse James. So Robert and his brother Charlie, they decide, like, okay, we're going to go get him. We're going to split the money for capturing Jesse. So Charlie is, like, friends with Jesse. Not friends, but he's, like, well acquainted with, like, Jesse and, like, his gang. So he was able to convince Jesse that Robert was, like, the perfect person for, like, Jesse's next big heist. So Jesse invites them to his home in St. Joseph so they could, like, plan a bank robbery. And on April 3rd, 1882, the Ford brothers and Jesse have breakfast. They go back to Jesse's home. And this is just sad. Like, I feel bad for... I mean, Jesse was an awful criminal, but I almost feel bad for Jesse here because he stands up on a chair. He turns around, stands up on a chair to just dust off a picture, and Robert shoots him point blank in the back of the head. And this was kind of the case where people... Like, this is the case where people kind of realized that you can't just kill someone in a bounty, because they received the money for killing, but they were still arrested for murder because Jesse was unarmed, he wasn't threatening, he didn't even know he was being arrested. So there was no reason for them to shoot him. They just did it, and that's like...
Jesse ain't do nothing.
Yeah, Jesse ain't do nothing wrong. Free my man Jesse, he ain't do nothing.
Free my man Jesse.
But no, so they end up killing him because, like, they thought that they could, because the poster always said, like, wanted dead or alive, and it turns out that they couldn't because he didn't pose any sort of threat to them, and then they ended up getting arrested. So, yeah, if you ever see a wanted dead or alive poster, don't go killing people.
Dead or alive.
Unless they pose a threat
so
to you.
weird.
You can do it, you can kill in self-defense. Only kill in self-defense.
That is just so strange to me, because I feel like when I do that, I just, like, kill him, you know? Like, get it over with. Oh.
Yeah, but this is why... Whoa, okay, Aaron.
I mean, in the game, like...
Because I know I kind of went on a whole long story, so you may have forgotten that I said this, just people in the audience, but before I started telling the story, I said that this is an accurate part of Red Dead, is that
Right.
the only time you kill the fugitive is when you're being attacked, either by the fugitive or the gang knows you're coming, like the fugitive's gang knows you're coming, and they start a shootout with you. Then you can kill the like, that's why it like gives you the option to, like, kill the fugitive. So that's like, even though bounty hunting is pretty even though bounty hunting is, like, kind of inaccurate in the game, that is, like, one little accurate piece of it, is that you do kill the fugitive usually in self-defense, otherwise you try to capture them.
I like, did not know that. Like, that's... Thank you for telling me that.
Yeah, me neither.
Next time I do that, I'll try to be more lenient.
Yeah, whenever we be doing bounties in Red Dead, like, I kind of be just all guns blazing. But
Yeah, no, I always try to... Because also, like, and this is true as well to the game, like, this part of the game is true to history, is that, like, you get less money if you bring in the fugitive dead.
Oh,
They don't give you as
yeah.
much money, which is why I always try to capture the fugitive, because you just get more out of it.
True.
So, it's also fun to lasso people. I like
Oh,
that.
Yeah, I'm sure Delia's experienced the last swing a lot.
For context, people always lasso, because in the game you can lasso other players and then, like, hog tie them and, like, drag
Shout
them
out to
around.
Tony.
Yeah, that happens to me. That happens to me a lot in the game. I get lassoed by our friends a lot. So,
Tony, I know you out there.
shout out to Tony. But yeah, no, wanted dead or alive posters. It really just means wanted alive. I don't know why they say wanted dead or alive, because they're never actually wanted dead. The whole point is
throw the corpse at, like, the sheriff's office or whatever. Just, like, throw
in the
like,
game
corpse on the ground.
in
And
the,
be like, oh, here.
in the game you literally just drop the corpse in the sheriff's office, and I'm sure it's a similar thing in real life. Like, hey, sheriff, I mean, it wouldn't be the same in real life because it would be the sheriff himself going to do it, and that was another thing, is, like, you know, it would be the sheriff or law enforcement or someone else going to do it. But yeah, I assume that these two guys who made the deal with the governor, I'm sure the Ford brothers were like, hey, like, governor, we did it. And he was probably like, what the hell did you do? He's dead.
Yeah.
So,
That's kind of funny because like in like that reminds me like in the story mode, like when your gang like when it starts to like get really bad and like you have nowhere else to run, they still like I'm pretty sure like they still try to like make deals with you. Like they're sort of like they could just kill you. Like they could just shoot you in the head. Like you said, like when you're like dusting off a painting, like the Pinkertons. I mean, or like the police that are like trying to get your gang in the story mode. But they don't always like they try to like make deals with you, and maybe that could kind of be like the thing, like you said, like they want to be paid more. They don't want to like kill you right away because that could like get them in trouble.
mm-hmm.
So I don't know, but
Yeah, and I'm just now realizing how different online and story mode is, because I don't know that much about story mode, but I do know about online. And like as you're talking about online, like or when you're talking about the story mode and I'm talking about online, like the story mode seems so much more accurate.
It really is.
Oh, it definitely is.
Yeah, whereas
like you were saying,
whereas online is just like, yeah, just go around and like, I don't know, shoot some people. Like
yeah, and like story mode has these like little hints, like bits and pieces of like real life history. Like I already said some of them in the beginning, but there's like a point in the story mode where you're like you get shipwrecked and you get sort of like shipwrecked like on this island called Guarma, I think. And it's like this like tropical area. It's kind of weird, but I was researching it, and I think it could be based off like the Panama Canal, which was sort of being built at the time, and it's like this tropical place that was previously not inhabited by anybody, but as like industrialization started to spread across America and people wanted more property, people wanted more money, like they would start to like build factories and like have power, like billionaires, like they would have power over these like places that weren't even in America. So like that place, what was it called, like Guarma, like I had no idea that could like even be real. Like I thought it was like a random part of the story where they're like, oh, now you're on like a tropical island, but it's like I don't know, like the story mode's really interesting. Like they have all these like, and we were talking about, I was gonna say it's more, but like we were talking about like the women's suffrage, about like I don't know if you guys know, but there's like this, you meet this like one woman in the story mode, and she's holding up this like sign and stuff, and it's sort of like a lot of people know it because like a lot of people like to troll and they'll like kill the woman like holding up the suffrage sign. But it's like based off this like real life picture. Like I saw it, and I mean I don't know if it was like directly based off, but I saw this picture of a woman wearing like the same outfit and like holding up a sign, and she was alone. She was totally there. So I was like, oh, that's like kind of cool. Like that same woman that everybody like hog ties to like, you know, troll and stuff in the game, like that could be based off like a real person. Oh my gosh. And also the whole genetics thing, what was it called? I don't know, but eugenics, yeah, like where you don't like, there's this one guy in the story mode. Oh my god, and the KKK, there's so much stuff.
Oh yeah, I've seen stuff about that.
They have people supporting eugenics, they have like suffrage, they have like everything. I don't know about online, but story mode has all of these little like their parts and people that aren't
has
story mode is definitely
online has absolutely
out
nothing.
That stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're not even essential to the story. Like Rockstar just like adds them in to make the story seem more authentic, and it really works because you really feel like you're a part of history, and it's really cool. But yeah.
I would like to give a quick shout out to Rockstar, because Rockstar also made GTA, which is what we talked about yesterday. So Rockstar is honestly kind of a rock star in all this, because they make these games that are fun and also just like super important, like subject wise. So like shout out to Rockstar for actually making some high quality games. Is that the owner of Rockstar? I don't know.
Yeah, we can do an episode of Overwatch.
No, there will be no episode on Overwatch.
No.
Unfortunately.
I'm trying to see what else I have in my notes here. I don't really have
I
do
got a
have I
fun
do have the
fact.
you have a fun fact? Do give us a fun fact.
Yeah. Okay. So stereotypes of gypsies, as I talked about. There's one main one that we definitely still reference. Maybe like not every day, but pretty frequently. So has anyone heard the saying I got gypped or I got gypped out of something?
I literally just said that like 2 days ago to my mom.
Yeah.
Shout out to my mom.
Yo,
Hi mom. No, I know my mom is listening. Hi mom.
Shut up, mom. Yeah.
Anyways, what were you gonna say?
So basically, gypsies were known for their fortune telling and their trading. But a stereotype came to be that they would trick you out of your trades, they would form fraud out of your trades or your fortune. Like, it became known, not really known, but people began to think that, oh, all the fortunes are fraud. Gypsies are just frauds. They trick you out of your trades. They don't give you what they say they will. And basically, English speakers began to say that whenever a gypsy did something that they did not like, for example, just traded them something they didn't like, gave them a weird fortune, they'd be like, I got gypped. And that just kind of stuck with us, and we used it for, sayings today. But this wasn't even true. Gypsies were actually more fair than probably Americans, because the article I read went into depth about looking at even court records from the time period we're talking about, and more American, like, I don't know what to say, white, I guess, had more fraud charges than those who were gypsies. So it just shows, stereotypes just kind of stick with us, aren't real, but we still use this saying. We don't even realize that it's from that.
I honestly use it all the time. And because I don't know how it's actually spelled, but I've always spelled it Jipped, gypped. So I didn't actually know like it was associated with gypsies, because the way that I spell it is not at all close to the spelling of gypsy. So I just never assumed. I just thought it meant like,
That's
oh,
how
like,
I spelled it
like
too.
I just thought that it was just a word. Like, oh, I got gypped. Like I thought that's just what it was. It's like, that's so interesting. Like,
yeah, like I spelled it that way too, but the article said it's actually spelled GYP and then GYPPED.
gypped. Wow. I don't know. Like, I mean, I'm not gonna ever start spelling it correctly, because that just sounds like I'm being racist towards gypsies, which I obviously don't have a problem with gypsies. I think they're cool. So like,
Yeah, you don't even realize though.
Yeah. Like it's just something that like you don't like if you spell it like that, like Jipped, which I feel like most people do, you're never gonna realize that.
Yeah.
Like that's so interesting. I don't know. Like that's
Yeah.
I'm trying to look through. I do have a timeline. I do have a timeline of bounty hunting. It's a very short timeline, because I only went up until it's only 3 things. Because the timeline went longer, went like past the storyline of Red Dead, more into the modern day, but I didn't care about that too much, because we're talking about Red Dead. So apparently in the 13th century, just in general, bounty hunting in England was rewarded not with money, but with like people. And that sounds like slavery. I promise it's not slavery. So if the bounty hunter, it basically meant that if the bounty hunter failed to bring in a fugitive, because they would more capture like people who were like not upholding their bails, because if you get out on bail, most times you do have to return later to go to trial. So in the 13th century in England, bounty hunters were used to go capture those people who were out on bail but not returning to trial. So if the bounty hunter failed to bring in the fugitive, then the bounty hunter himself would have to stand in the fugitive's place in trial. And that also meant that he had to serve the fugitive's punishment.
That's kind of funny.
So it's stupid. It's like weird. So
it's kind of silly.
So let's kind of quirky and different. So
Silly
let's say,
goose.
so
Yeah.
let's say that Erin is a fugitive and she gets out on
Oh,
bail.
yeah.
Aaron was a silly.
Erin did a silly thing. Erin was a silly
Yeah.
goose. Erin was a silly
Yeah.
goose. And Erin gets out on bail. Kara's a judge. Kara says, Erin, you can get out on bail, but you must return back to me to stand trial. And Erin doesn't do that. Then Kara would send me to go get Erin.
Get her, boy.
That's how they talked in 13th century England.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you go get her, boy.
You go fetch him, boy.
So let's say Kara as a judge sends me to go get Erin, and Erin escapes. I don't get her. Then Kara will say, "Okay, you didn't go get Erin. You're gonna stand in her place, and if we find you guilty, you're serving her punishment," which usually meant that I would be hanged.
Say what?
Oh
So
my god, that's crazy.
yeah,
I'm not
so
high today.
so it's weird. But then in 1679, I don't know how to pronounce this word. I think it's pronounced habeas, but I think it's Latin. The Habeas Corpus Act stated that British Parliament now had a structured bail system and a monetary bail. So instead of like being rewarded, or like essentially being rewarded with your life because you didn't have to stand trial, instead you would just get paid money as a reward, and that's where like the typical like money reward for bounty hunting came.
Mhm.
And if you failed, you just weren't paid anything. And then America developed this as well through the Eighth Amendment, which prevented excessive bail so that people weren't paying too much. And then in 1873, there was an American case called Taylor versus Tainter, and bounty hunters through this case were now able to act as agents of bail bondsmen. So this is where the whole bail bondsman thing started. They now had the authority to look for fugitives over state lines, and they could enter their homes without a warrant. And that's where this whole bail bondsman thing came from, where if you failed to uphold your bail, then law enforcement, sheriffs, police, whoever, could go after you and bring you back and get a monetary reward. So, and then that leads up to 1899, where Red Dead takes place with the bounty hunting that we see in the game. So
That's so cool.
there's a little history.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
bounty
Okay,
hunting.
moral of the story. I think I have to play Red Dead Online, and you guys should play the story.
I do want to play the story.
Heck yeah.
I just
The
don't.
story
I don't want
is
to
so
purchase
good.
it.
Oh my
I don't want to buy it.
I
Oh
only
yeah, but you should.
Yeah. It's on Game Pass. I only got to the part, like, I think I got 20% of the way through before my hard drive blew up and I lost my progress and I ended up, like, starting over. But,
That's what happened with me with GTA.
yeah, like,
Except
I
I did end up
remember,
starting over.
though, the last thing being I was at a women's suffrage movement or something. Yeah.
Oh,
With Sadie.
I love Sadie. Oh my god. Okay. I just remember the game. Like it actually like I don't want to say progressive, but it's like kind of like I mean it's like kind of progressive. Like for example, like I mean for its time. I mean so like you gain on you know how you like gain or lose honor in that
Yeah.
game?
Mhm.
You like
I
gain
have
honor.
literally no honor in online. I'm in like the red. I'm in the red zone.
Oh, well, you gotta get good honor in the story mode. But
That's-
anyway, when you like kill the KKK members, you like gain honor. And it's like,
Hmm.
and then like you like a lot of the missions. I don't know why I didn't mention this, but a lot of the missions in story mode, you actually like help like Native American people like keep their land because again, industrialization. Like I'm gonna say it like 100 times, but you know, like robber barons, all these rich people, they want oil, they want the monopolies. They want like all of that stuff, and the Native. You know, we know the whole story from history. Like the Native Americans have that land, and the white people they want what's in that land. And, you know how the story goes again, but and as Arthur, as the main character, you actually help the Native Americans. So it's like really interesting, almost like be on the other side of history, sort of.
Mhm. I gotta watch like at least a walkthrough of this game because
Yeah, you
I
definitely do.
know nothing. I know about Arthur Morgan, and I know the ending of Red Dead 2, which I will not say because spoilers.
Oh.
No, I will not spoil anything. But like, I really know nothing about it. I know that like, because there was also a whole thing with like, there's at least in the online, there's like moonshine and it like and the whole like underground alcohol thing. I'm not sure if prohibition was around. I can actually look that up right now if prohibition was around, but because my little knowledge of American history, I think there were 2 prohibitions, but
Let's see. Let's find
do a
out.
quick little Google search.
My cat really wants to be involved.
No, I know that. Hi, Oreo.
Oreo on the mic. What does he have to say?
Okay, guys, this is what Oreo has to say about Red Dead. Thank you.
Say it again.
Thank you, sir. Oh, wait, he wants to say more.
Yeah.
This is your Oreo break while I do a search on prohibition because now
I
I'm
love
curious.
Oreo.
Guys, there will also be a picture of my cat on the Instagram.
So I know that I will put a picture of Oreo on the Instagram. I have several. So I know that prohibition happened in the 1900s. I'm more just trying to see because in online you can purchase like underground like bars and you can like do a transport of moonshine, and if you get stopped and found with moonshine, then you can like get arrested. So I'm trying to figure out like I don't know. I'm trying to figure out why that is because I didn't think prohibition was like a thing at this time. We have saloons and stuff, so you could definitely have alcohol,
Bar fights,
and bar fights and stuff. So I mean, apparently moonshine.
Weird.
It's just moonshine specifically because this is just a Wikipedia article. But moonshine is high proof liquor that was and continues to be produced illicitly without government authorization. So it's just so alcohol was allowed, which is why you had the moonshine, which is why you had the saloons. But then there was also moonshine being produced underground, which is something you can do in online. You can run your own like moonshine business, and that's why if you get found with moonshine specifically, you can get arrested because it's illegal.
Oh.
So there's a little moonshine fact that was outside of our research topics, but I was just curious about it.
And also, I'm not completely sure. I think 1865 or something like that. Like that was when the Civil War ended, I believe, and that was not that far off from 1899, which is when the game takes place. So you still have the repercussions of the war, such as like racism and like the division of states and like how like they're almost like 2 different United States. You have like the industrialized one, and then you have the ones that like you live in as the main character. Like you're serving like the Wild West, like not industrialized. So it's sort of interesting that all these other like events like Prohibition, Civil War, even though they're not directly mentioned nor related to the game, that you can still find little bits and pieces of how they affect the game, whether that be in the story mode or even like online. But I love this game so much. If anyone here's listening, you should definitely play it. Like it's so good.
This is why I like Red Dead a lot, because one thing that I do know is that post Civil War, you didn't really have black people in positions of power. And in Red Dead, you have, black sheriffs, black civilians. I mean, I know that there's like the KKK and stuff, but in like you have black sheriffs, you have black, business owners, and I think one of the bartenders at the saloon is like is black. So like I like that at a time where there wouldn't have been a lot of diversity, Red Dead makes diversity. That is the one thing that I like that they break historical accuracy for.
Yeah, and like I said for Sadie, like the women's roles too. Like I find it so badass that there's like a woman who was just a widow wearing like a big poofy skirt, like a few months ago. Now she's wearing like a cowboy outfit, and now she's gunslinging. She's probably like, I mean,
she's really cool.
You guys have to play the story. Like it's totally different. Like this character, Sadie, she's probably like one of the most terrifying characters like in the game. She's like so badass. She's so like terrifying, but not in like a bad way. I mean, in a way that's like fighting for the one she loves. And I feel like that's so interesting, especially in a gang like Vanderlinde, where Dutch Vanderlinde, he's the leader of the gang. He has a very progressive mindset. That's why he allows like black people, he allows women in the gang, he allows like all these different types of people because he sort of goes against like typical American ideals, such as like, you know, racism and all that. He allows women to gunsling. He lets black people in his gang have high posts of power, and that's why the gang is so good. That's why the game is so good as well, because Dutch Vanderlyn, like, oh my god, you guys have to play it. It's so good.
Yeah. Are they like a Robin Hood complex type thing? Like steal from the rich, provide for the poor?
Yes, they are. Oh my gosh. Oh my god, there's a quote. Oh frick. Hold on, I'll try to find it. There's a quote that literally said like exactly that. It was from like Dutch. I can't remember what, but or something like that. But yes, like basically, like they're Dutch again. Like he's the leader of the game. His ideals were to steal from the rich, provide for the poor. Exactly what you said. So that's another reason
that's
why
called a Robin Hood. It's called a Robin Hood complex.
Yeah, exactly. That's why you sort of feel for the characters, and that's why like you get so attached, because not only are they like more progressive than they would be at the time, they allow more types of people in the gang, they also have these like better morals, and that's why you can sort of like oh my gosh, you empathize with them, because they're sort of feeling like ostracized by like this new America where they're being like chased after by police and all that. Oh my gosh, I could go on for hours how much I love this game. It's so good.
This just made just made me think of, but a little while back, I wanted you to keep talking because you had really good points. But like when we were talking about the Civil War and stuff, that just made me remember a little bounty hunting. I was gonna call it a fun fact, but it's actually not fun at all. Apparently, during the Fugitive Slave Act, you could put bounties on your slaves.
Yeah.
And people literally went to go bounty hunt slaves and bring them back to their masters and would get paid for it.
Right.
So that's not a fun fact at all. That's just a fact, but it's a sad fact. But that is just because we were talking about like the Civil War, and like obviously I studied bounty hunting and stuff. Like I just thought that was like a little relation there, is that like that is something you could do with bounty hunting, is you could get law enforcement to go find your slave and bring them back, and then you would like pay them.
Right. Yeah. I think we like pretty much covered like a lot of stuff. Anyway.
Yeah, unless Kara has anything else she would like to say, but
no. I don't know. I really want to play this game now.
I think that is gonna wrap it up for this episode of History Through a Headset. Tomorrow we start our 2-part episodes. For the next 2 days, we start talking about Rainbow Six Siege, which I'm probably the most excited for, because we all love Siege. So, so tomorrow we will be talking about some international military branches in Rainbow Six Siege. That'll be part 1. Woo! So stay tuned for that. I'm very excited.
Yeah.
And I think that is gonna do it for our little Wild West discussion of Red Dead Redemption. So thank you so much for listening. My name is Delia. This has been Kara and Aaron. We'll see you tomorrow for another episode of History Through a Headset.
Catch you on the flip side.
Catch you on the flip side.
Hit that like button, boy.
Hit that like button, subscribe, follow our Instagram. Oh yeah, comment if you've seen Dog the Bounty Hunter. That was our question earlier.
Oh yeah.
Question of the day, which I now want to start doing. Comment if you've seen Dog the Bounty Hunter and your thoughts on it. See y'all tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.